Welcome back to my kitchen. Today we are making fresh strawberry scones. The ingredients that we're going to need are 2 1/4 cup all-purpose flour. And then we're gonna do 3 tablespoons of granulated sugar, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then we're going to just stir that together, and we're gonna grate in our very cold unsalted butter, 8 tablespoons. So I'm using a cheese grater. We're gonna grate the cold butter into the dry ingredients. Now we're going to get it all chopped up in there, and this will help it make tiny little pearl size that will melt down perfectly to make a flaky scone. The colder the better, because it will melt down slower in the oven. And you gotta try to work somewhat quickly because butter starts to melt at body temperature. That's why things with a lot of butter give the melt in your mouth sensation, because butter does truly melt in your mouth. Okay, now that all of the butter is grated into the flour, we are going to just mix it with our hands. Until the butter is all coated. And then we're gonna add 1.5 cups of, or sorry, it's 3/4 cup of buttermilk. We're gonna stir it all together. We're gonna get in there with our hands and knead it a little bit more. The dough is super flaky at this point because we're gonna cut up and add the strawberries, and the strawberries have a lot of moisture. So we don't want it to fully come together yet because the strawberries are going to add a lot of liquid into the scone. And scones have to have somewhat of a dry batter so that they're crumbly. So we're gonna put that aside right here. All right, now we're going to chop up the strawberries into little bits, and we only need a cup of chopped strawberries. So I'm gonna reuse the cup that I just used for my buttermilk. And I am going to get 1 cup of strawberry bits. The fresh strawberries are so delicious in this scone because just the flavor, and if you use a frozen strawberry, they're gonna have a lot more liquid content, so you'd have to adjust the recipe. But for this, we're using just a cup of diced strawberries. I am about 1/2 cup, and I'm 2 strawberries in. So if you've got 4 or 5 strawberries in your fridge, you have enough to make this scone recipe. All right, maybe just 1 more big strawberry should get us to 1 cup. Now we have our cup of fresh strawberries to go into our batter. Okay, so now we're gonna add the cup of fresh strawberries into our scone dough. And I'm just gonna use my hands to knead it all together. and just get it to stick together is the goal. into one mound of scone dough. You also don't want to overwork the dough because then you'll melt down your butter prematurely. You want it to melt in the oven. So I'm just trying to get it to all come together, and that's it. I'm not going to keep going. We're there. So then we're going to transfer this dough ball over to a parchment paper on a light metal cookie sheet, because light metal is the best heat conductor in the oven. So we're going to put it on this light metal cookie sheet, and we're going to make it a circle. And I'm just going to press it down with my hands. Get everything all together. Okay. Once you have your circle, you're going to take a knife and you're going to cut it in half, and then in fourths, and then in eighths. This recipe makes 8 strawberry scones. Then you're going to take your triangles and you're going to separate them on the baking sheet so that they don't get baked all together. Like this. And now we're going to throw it in the oven at 425 for 12 to 14 minutes so that it can bake. All right, now we're going to start on the glaze that goes on top. So it's 1.5 cups powdered sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, 4 tablespoons of melted unsalted butter, and 1 tablespoon of heavy whipping cream. We're just gonna whisk that all together until it's nice and smooth. This is a kind of glaze that will dry as the scones sit at room temperature, so it's not messy when you eat it. There you go. Now we'll just wait for those scones to finish up in the oven and let them cool before we glaze them. Okay, the scones are hot and out of the oven. I'm gonna let them cool for 10 to 15 minutes before glazing them. All right, the scones have cooled down a bit, and now I'm going to glaze them with this delicious sweet glaze. I just like to do a drizzle on each one, and then you can let them set so the glaze will dry and they won't be sticky to handle. And these just make the perfect breakfast on the go or snack between meals. So delicious and fresh. Use up all that glaze because it is so delicious. Really complements the buttery strawberry scone. And then enjoy.